Hi students, today we're going to talk about something called vector graphics. You may have noticed when you look at sprites in Scratch, or you go to create sprites in Scratch, that you've got two choices. One choice is to use vectors, and the other choice is to use bitmap. And you need to know what the difference is between these and when you would use one versus the other. So that's what we are going to talk about today. A bitmap is drawn pixel by pixel. So the entire screen is split up into a whole bunch of little boxes called pixels, and the program tells each box which color to put in. So it will say in box X equals 2, Y equals 3, use color 277. And so it paints the picture one little box at a time. The problem is when you go to resize your picture, you're going to end up with pixelation because after all, bitmap is created with pixels. So what are vectors? Vector drawing is different. Vector images always look smooth, and they are created using what we call objects. So basically, the computer has a formula that it uses to create the shape. For example, the formula of a circle, or the formula for making a rectangle. And what it does is keeps everything inside that shape together. And so vectors can be made much, much smaller. They can be made much, much bigger, and you never end up with that pixelation. You always have a nice, smooth product. In Scratch, when you go and look at your sprites, the library of sprites in Scratch, for the most part, are made using vectors. And as you go in and explore, you're going to be able to quickly see which ones are vectors and which ones are a bitmap. Bitmap is used for drawing, and it's also used for photographs. So if you paint something in a 3D Windows Paint, it will show up as a bitmap. So you're going to be able to create your own sprites, either using the Paint program or using the Vector app. And today we're going to look at using the Vector app. So how to eat an elephant. How do you create a vector graphic? Basically, what you do is you do one small part at a time. You really don't need a lot of drawing skills. You do need to recognize the basic shapes that are making up objects that you want to draw. So, for example, if you're looking at a person, you're going to be looking for circles, ovals, triangles, rectangles. So you might say, well, a person's head looks a lot like a circle or an oval. A person's neck looks a lot like a rectangle. The trunk of the body looks like a rectangle. The arms and legs can be made out of rectangles. So you're going to want to look at the sprite that you are making and look at it in terms of basic shapes. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through creating a shape, basically a vector of an apple. And what I would like you to do is go ahead and open your Scratch program in another tab. And every time we give you a set of instructions, you're going to stop the video, you're going to go into your Scratch project, and you're going to try out what you were told to do. By the end of this video, you will have your first vector graphic, and then you'll be able to experiment and create some more. We're also going to put up some examples of vector graphics that other students just like you made. So when you're in the vector graphics, you're going to have certain tools. You're going to have an arrow tool. You're going to have a node tool. And the node tool is pretty much the most important one because it shows you the nodes, and you can manipulate the vector graphic by moving nodes. They then remain connected to the node next to them, and that's how you change the shape. You also got a paintbrush and paint bucket. You can create text, and you can erase things. The three things at the bottom, the line, the circle, and the rectangle, are the most important things you're going to use when you are creating your vectors. So this is where you want to look at your shape and you want to see, is the shape closer to a circle? Is the shape closer to a rectangle? Is the shape closer to something I can make with a line, a series of lines like a triangle? So you're going to want to take a look at that first. Here's some of the vocabulary words we use when we're drawing vector graphics. The canvas is where you draw, obviously like a painter's canvas. A node is a point on the path of an object. The nodes are all connected to each other in any one vector object. And it is by pulling, pushing, and moving the nodes that you change the shape of your vector graphic. An object is a circle, a square, or a line containing a bunch of nodes that are all connected to each other. The arrow tool lets you grab, resize, rotate objects, and the node tools let you move, add, or select nodes. So what you're going to do is you're going to open a new project in Scratch. And what I want you to do is stop the program and make sure that you have got a vector drawing open. You're going to click on the blue scratch cat icon. You're going to select the paintbrush, and that's going to create a new canvas for you to make a new sprite. So stop the video right now and go ahead and create your sprite. There's two ways that you can create a custom sprite. First of all, you can make an entirely new sprite, and that's what we're going to start off by doing this time. The other thing you can do is you can take an existing sprite like Scratch Cat, and you can click on the sprite's icon to make it active, click on the arrow tool, and then click on the sprite and make changes that you want. Now, watch out. If you click Convert to Bitmap at the bottom of your drawing screen, your illustration will turn into a pixelated bitmap, also known as raster image, and you will not be able to turn it back into a vector. So be very careful. I would always save your program or your project before you do any conversion to bitmap, because you may be sorry if you don't do that. So the first thing you're going to do is draw the apple shape. So you're going to select the empty sprite canvas. You're going to select the circle tool. You're going to create the circle by clicking on the empty canvas and dragging your mouse. You can make the circle any size you want. I would make it pretty big. If you press the Shift key while you drag your circle out, you'll get a perfect circle. If you don't do that, you may end up with an oval. Then you're going to change the color of your circle. So you select the arrow tool, click on the circle, and then click the drop-down menu under Fill. This opens options for changing the color, changing the saturation, which is how deeply the thing is colored in, and then changing the brightness. If you want the shape to be see-through, select the white box with a diagonal red line to set the color to none. If you want to add or remove a colored border around your object, select the drop-down menu under Outline. So what I'd like you to do is stop your tape at this point, your video, go and create your circle and experiment a little bit with the color and with the outline, because there's all sorts of really cool things you can do. When you're finished with that, go back and restart this video and go to the next slide. So here is an example of a circle which was created by the person who wrote the article about vector graphics. So you can see they made a perfect circle and then they colored it in purple. So we're going to change the color of the circle so that it actually looks more like an apple. So if you select the node tool, and this will be something you're going to do in just a moment, you're going to click the center of your object to select it. You're going to see 4 nodes spaced evenly around the circle. Then you can try moving some of the nodes and changing the circle shape. You can add more nodes by clicking along the circle's edge, and each of those nodes will be connected to the 2 nodes next to it. If you move a node too much or add a node by accident, remember that you can always do Control Z. So at this point, I want you to stop your video. I want you to make sure that the color of your apple is about apple colored. And now we're going to start forming the shape of the apple. So apples are usually smaller on the bottom than the top. So you're going to click and drag across two side nodes to select them. The nodes will turn blue when you select them. So you use the arrow tool, and then you can use the node tool. With the nodes selected, press the up arrow on your keyboard to move the nodes towards the top of the circle. That will keep everything nice and even. So stop the video, do that, or take a look at the next little section and then stop your video so that you can start shaping your apple. So here's an example of what the apple looks like once the nodes have been moved up a little bit. Notice that causes the bottom to look a little smaller, the top to look a little bit bigger. Next thing is going to be to add some nodes towards the bottom of the circle, one on the left, one on the right, and then raise up the original bottom center node slightly so that you've got the little indentation that's in the apple. So again, stop your video for a moment and do that. Now you're going to add two nodes at the top of the circle the same way. Lower the original top center node down, create an indentation. Adjust your apple until it's just the shape that you would like it, and then restart the video. Next, we're going to draw a stem. So if you think about an apple stem, it looks more like a rectangle than like a circle. So you're going to go to the rectangle tool. You're going to create a long, thin rectangle. Then you're going to use the node tool to start shaping the rectangle so that it looks like a stem. You're going to make the fill whatever color you would like. You're going to select the stem using the arrow tool, and then you're going to move the stem behind the apple by clicking the backward button above the canvas. So we're going to talk a little bit more at another time about grouping and ungrouping your objects, but we want to put the stem behind the apple. So go ahead and do that, and then restart your video. So here's what it looks like, or one example of what it looks like. So notice that we've made the stem somewhat wider at the top and narrower at the bottom, and it's got a color green. Maybe you made it brown, maybe you made it purple. So, but do not click on that thing that says convert to bitmap. Last thing we're going to do is add a highlight shape. So you're going to select the line tool, and you're going to draw a triangle. Then you're going to select the triangle, change it to a lighter color like white or whatever else you'd like the reflection to look like. You're going to add and adjust nodes with the node tool, highlight the shape, create the highlight shape. If things are too sharp and pointed, you can actually select the node you want to curve and select a curve button. So you can make things curvy, you can make things sharp. And here's a pro tip. To select more than one node at a time, press Shift while selecting each node. That way you can change several nodes at the same time. So here's an example of what your apple might look like now. Pretty amazing, huh? And you can go ahead and continue to play around with your apple until it looks just the way you want it. Remember, it's your apple. It doesn't have to look exactly like this one. Now, notice what happens when you make your apple smaller and when you make your apple bigger. It always looks really good and really professional. And if you want to, let's say, take your image and take it outside of Scratch and maybe make it your profile picture, you can right-click on the costume thumbnail and export it. And then that will be an SVG file, which is a vector file. So here we go, and you can even make a little program if you want and have your apple move around. If you want to use the image in the Scratch project, go to the Code tab, and you'll have your sprite showing up in the right corner with the rest of the project sprite, and then you can make your apple do whatever you would like. And you can even make other costumes for the apple For example, an apple with a bite taken out of it, an apple with a worm sticking out of it. Use your imagination and play around with your apple a bit. Here are some additional resources. The first one is the actual article that this slideshow was taken from. And the second one is just a little bit of a further explanation of the differences between bitmap and vector drawings and why you would like to use the one that you choose. Bye-bye for now.